First up is In the Heights. It's an adaptation of the musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it's written by Quiara Alegría Hudes, and Jon M of Crazy Rich Asians directed it. And I had actually seen the Broadway musical back when it was on Broadway in New York, and this was years and years ago, and no expectations on it because I didn't know who Lin-Manuel Miranda was. Actually, I did sort of know who he was because he was on a children's television show I was working on. Hamilton obviously had not come out yet, but I just had heard about this really delightful show, and I was like, all right, let's go see it. And it's such a fun experience live. It's one of those live theater moments that you are just taken in by the performances. And so I was really concerned. I'm concerned anytime they're adapting a stage show to the screen because there are things that you can take advantage of and that can plus it up, but there are things that you sacrifice as a byproduct, right? Like that sort of in-person interaction. And so I gotta say, In the Heights, what a delight. I was having a really, really bad day when I watched it. And then I was just like, this is just uplifting. And not that I saw a very happy musical, but the music is just, it's so good. He's so good. I cannot imagine what the expectations are going to be on if he does a third Broadway show ever, an original one, because it's almost unfair what people will expect of him. My hope is maybe he does it secretly under a pen name and then we find out it was him. It's like, of course it was him. And not that he hasn't had projects that have been hugely successful after Hamilton and after In the Heights, but I'm digressing. In the Heights, it's a musical. It takes place in Washington Heights in New York, and it focuses on this sort of tight-knit community, mostly Spanish-speaking, but people from all over who just live in this neighborhood, and they all have different goals, and I'm not going to go too much into the plot. The thing about Lin-Manuel's musicals, and probably good musicals in general, is that you cannot miss anything in them. Like, the music is so important, and the plot is contained in the music in these. There's not really, I can't remember, but I don't think there's any actual, like, regular dialogue. It's all sung, and so you have to pay attention to it. I think the one thing to be aware of as a byproduct of that is that they tend to be a little bit longer. Like, this is about 2 hours and 20 minutes, which can be long for some people. I was fine with it. It was super enjoyable. I watched, the whole thing through and was having a great time, but just be aware that when you're adapting it, it's not like you can cut it, and like stage shows have an intermission, right? But this doesn't have an intermission. So I think they did a really good job of it. Also, the other thing I want to compliment it on is a lot of times you see these stage-to-screen adaptations, and they're in like one room. And I'm like, you're not limited by a physical stage and set anymore. Why are you constraining it to the same the same places that the stage was constrained to? Take advantage of the medium of film and being able to film things on location and just all of this stuff. And this movie does that in spades. It's a spectacle and in such a delightful way. And there are parts of it that remind me of like a Busby Berkeley musical, which you cannot do on stage, but you can certainly do on screen. And just the way it shows New York and people, and it made my heart happy. Anthony Ramos stars, who you probably know from Hamilton. You've also got Melissa Barrera, Leslie Grace, Corey Hawkins, Jimmy Smits, Stephanie Beatriz, Dascha Polanco. It was a really good cast. I was very impressed everyone can sing, or at least they found voices for them that can sing. Again, I mentioned it's beautiful. I won't go into the plot aside from what I mentioned. It just takes place over a weekend, and it's a story of a neighborhood, and it's a story of a people, and it's got great music, and it's fun, and it's also sad, and it's everything I kind of feel like I want in a movie right now, and I don't think it's a perfect movie, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't find a reason not to tell you to watch this film. Aside from maybe if you're like younger, the length might get you. But for the rest of it, I'm like, it's so smart and fun. Absolutely worth seeing. I am going to give it one of my rare 5 out of 5s because, as I said, I cannot find a reason to tell you not to watch this film, except for, again, the asterisk of like, just be aware, it's slightly longer. Also, I'll say 5 out of 5 unless you don't like musicals. But this is one of those scenarios as well where I'm going to be like, you know what? Give it a chance. Just give it a chance. It's because it's not necessarily one of those like traditional ballad, belty musicals like an Andrew Lloyd Webber one. I feel like because Lin-Manuel has a more modern style and cadence, and also it's just like super rapid fire. That's also why he crams so much plot and story into 2.5 hours that, of course, like, I can't even imagine how you would have to be able to cut it down more without losing the heart of the film and the music and all of that. So, like I said, 5 out of 5, a rare one, but I'm happy to give it to this film. I was so worried, but In the Heights, go see it. And then the other film I have this week is called Wish Dragon, and this is another one I was worried about just because Okay, there's a multifold worry with Wish Dragon. The premise is, well, I mean, basically it's Aladdin. Like, I don't know how else I don't want to spoil it, but it's also in the trailers. It's Aladdin, and if you aren't familiar with the story of Aladdin, well, it's about a young person who finds a genie, or in this case, a wish dragon. So I guess they'll find a magical creature who grants them 3 wishes, and then how do they use those wishes? What's the implications there? All that sort of stuff. That is Wish Dragon, also Aladdin. And this one, it takes place in modern China, which this, for me, was the big old like bang, bang, bang red flag, because 1, it is a white writer-director, and 2, the voice cast is Asian, but it's Asian from all over, and I've talked about at length the sort of considerations about like, okay, well, is it okay that from the diaspora, like we are casting Asians, because as long as we're promoting Asians, but I'm also like, why can't we find actors who are actually Chinese to do this? And most of them are. But for example, the dragon is voiced by John Cho, who is Korean, or Korean American now because he moved here. So, it's a longer conversation for this review. We'll focus on the review part of it. It's not the most original thing, is what I have to say. I don't know if that's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not elevating the platform of animation or storytelling. I think if you have kids, this is totally fine and cute. I think it's on Netflix, I should mention. And so, it's available, and yeah, it's available, and it's cute. Like, it's visually, very bright colors. The dragon is pink and furry, which like Disney, Sony, you gotta stop. Like, this is not what dragons are, but okay. Anyway, the voice cast is rounded up by Jimmy Wong, Natasha Leo Bordizzo, Constance Wu, Will Yun Lee, Bobby Lee, not related, Jimmy O Yang, and Ian Chen, and yeah, like, look, the other thing I have to say is I feel like John Cho is trying to do his best Robin Williams impression, which makes the parallels between Aladdin and this just feel so much tighter. And I'm like, oh, it's hard to beat Aladdin. I should also point out the story of Aladdin is actually a Chinese story to start. The Disney version of it, which is, I think, the one that most people know and the one I'm kind of referring to, it's first of all, Agrabah is not a real place, but second of all, it's moving it out of China. And in fact, I think they did that because they didn't want it to be sort of controversial in China, just given political stuff. But Wish Dragon, it's fine, it's cute. I think there are a couple of things that have to do with like filial piety that more have to do with East Asian cultures that they tried to inject into this. And then there are a couple of touching moments that happen when they divert from the sort of Aladdin plot that we know via the Disney Aladdin. So it's not exactly a 1-for-1. I'm going to say if you have kids, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I'm going to say if you're an adult who likes animation but isn't like a super fan, I don't know if this one is for you. And if you are an adult who is a super fan, you'll probably start picking it apart like I did in terms of like, okay, well, this is just ripped off from this, or this is an homage is the nicer way to say some of these things. But so anyway, 3 out of 5 if you have kids. If not, I'm going to say it's probably a pass.